So I got into Discoveryland through my small town that I grew up in, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, up north, which your dad has a property at, Gaza Ranch. So that's how this all kind of connects, is coming from that northern Idaho town.
One of the most beautiful towns, like maybe in the entire country. Like that lake is extraordinary, just for anyone listening out there. It's so beautiful.
So beautiful. My parents, were from Western Washington and drove over and, 1978 and, just kind of fell upon it. My dad's an architect and was interviewing for a new firm, and it was like they stumbled upon Coeur d'Alene, and it was like, okay, this is it. And they haven't left since. And, my house that I grew up in is a block from the lake. So I grew up going to the lake and all of this stuff. But yeah, so no, my story is interesting in that in this small little town, I have a sister, and there was a professional ballet school in this town, oddly enough. And it's because there was a old narcotic retired LAPD, or he might have been from Orange County. And when he retired, they're like, you got to go somewhere safe.
Like a narcotics officer.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And so his wife was a professional ballerina and was teaching down here in Southern California after she retired from ballet. So that's how it's funny. It's like they moved up there to Northern Idaho, and she's like, what am I going to do? And so she ended up like, well, fine, I'm just going to open up a ballet school here. So, I mean, my story starts as just, someone in Idaho that I was a little girl that would go to my sister's dance recitals, and my parents would say that I would be in the aisle, they couldn't keep me seated because I was always dancing. And then my mom and dad put me in this, like a regular cute little dance class. And the dance teacher came up to my parents and was like, your daughter's a little serious about this. and she's just not well fitted here because she's too serious about about ballet specifically. And so she suggested, she goes, well, I know this lady that has opened up a ballet school, but it's very professional. It's very strict. I just want to warn you guys. And, but I think that Abby would be very well suited there. So I think it was like 6 or so, and I go in there, and I still have my first pink leotard from when I started at that ballet school, and I'm keeping it safe in storage. But so I was this was a professional school, and you kind of auditioned to be in there, and she would look at you, and it was a very, like, your hair is pulled back, you have a bun, you wear these tights, you wear this unitard or leotard, and then, you show up to school, and parents, you do not say anything to me. Your daughters are mine. Your children are mine for this hour. And it was just incredible. And I was just in my element. I mean, I was like, yes, I was just so in my element. But so my life kind of took off from there, and I just, it was all by levels and by, kind of age group to kind of keep you. And so I was this little girl in Russian-trained school for ballet, and went to school, and I didn't do anything else. My life was go to normal school, public school, and then as soon as I got out, it was pull my hair back and get me to the ballet studio as soon as possible. And then, I had there was different ballet companies that would kind of come into town and do auditions and things like that. And so I started getting noticed. So different ballet schools would come, or different companies would come through town, or they'd go to, our closest city was Spokane, Washington, go Zags. And to do like auditions, and they would do the Nutcracker, and they would, perform. And so there was different companies that would kind of come through just to kind of scout. It was kind of like modeling, it's just kind of like knowing where ballet schools were and to, kind of scout girls and whatever. And, by the time I was 10 years old, my mom and my ballet teacher kept it from me for a whole year, but I had done the Nutcracker 1 year, performed with this other company, but then they told my parents and my ballet teacher and my mom specifically, like, we would like your daughter to actually be Clara, the main part. But
so would these be productions put on by the town, or would your teacher?
No, it'd be by the company, a company that would come through. We would have to audition to be in that performance.
So that was more of like a national company that.
Yes.
So like, okay.
Yeah, and they would come and do auditions, and we would have to audition for different parts in the ballet, because they'd have their professional, principal dancers, but then they would hire the younger, or not hire, but they would audition the younger students to kind of do some of the fill-in roles and things like that. So that's what we would do. But they had kind of scouted me and told my mom, and my ballet teacher, we would really like her next year to be our Clara, which was the main part. And they kept it from me for 10 months. And it was because, my mom taught me when I was really young. I remember her driving me to the ballet studio, and because she knew how serious I was, but also had talent, I could say. I had natural talent. I loved being on stage and performing, and I had a big heart and musicality.
Super athletic.
Yeah. And artistry and all of that. She taught me the word humble when I was little, and she goes, Abby, you are very talented, and I want to teach you this word humble, because no matter what is going to come your way, I just want you to accept things with grace and to be humble about it. And she was kind of teaching me what that word meant, so that, because I think, obviously she knew something behind the scenes of that, I was going to get offered things. And also because I had really close friends and we all danced together. And obviously there was other girls too that were even more talented than I was. But there was something, there's the sparkle or something that, they see, and they it's like acting. It's just like, it's like that guy, mm-hmm. There's something they see that is just, for some reason, even though there's better people than you, they like your spark. So that's kind of what happened. So it was like October or something. And then I was like, I just want to let you know that you've been asked to be Clara in the Nutcracker. I mean, that was the biggest deal. And in a way that, I had a news article printed about me, like full front cover, like a whole insert into the newspaper. The really hilarious thing is that they called me Abby Hoffman, which which is like a 70s, like, murderer. Like, it was, my mom was so upset. My parents were so upset, but they got my name wrong, because that's not my maiden name. But they, they had that. It was a big deal. And so I think that's why my mom was really trying to teach me that word about humility, so young, because it just, like, the attention just kind of came, because it's a small town. And then it was like, recognition.
And she saw the path that you were on, right? Like the trajectory, and like, this is serious, this is becoming serious and will be serious.
Yeah. So that's what by the time I was 11 years old, I was, the main part in this, in the Nutcracker. And
oh, wow. That was 11.
Yeah. When I was 11. Wow. And so I did that. But then, at 13, the dance world, this is how crazy it was for me. Is like, I was so serious that we were, even when I was in middle school, projecting that, like, we needed to accelerate my high school. I was trying to graduate by the time I was actually a junior. So by the time I was, in the 9th grade, freshman, sophomore, I was actually taking on more classes, and I was taking on sophomore classes plus my freshman classes, just so that I could get through high school as fast as possible. Because in the dance world, it's a very young career, and you have to be, they're giving you contracts at 17 years old. By the time you're 18, you're with the company and they're paying you. And, there's a lot of ballet companies in the nation, but there's like the ballet companies: San Francisco Ballet, Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle, New York City Ballet, which is a Balanchine style, and then there's American Ballet Theatre in New York City as well. And that was my number one company. That was my goal. Every, dancer that I looked up to was at American Ballet Theatre. And it was the number one ballet company in the United States. And I was like, so when I was little, I already had my eyesight there. It was like, that's what I want to do. So they really rushed we just kind of put together with like school counselors and stuff, a kind of a rush schooling program for me. Because there's some ballet schools that like they take on your education too. Like they're so professional that they take on your education. So you're almost homeschooled and then you go to, class for 8 hours a day, and then you have 4 hours of school. Like it's like that kind of, because your career and your contracts are so young. So, that was my goal and that was everything. So by the time I was 13, I guess when you're 13 years old, you're able to start auditioning for those big ballet companies. What they do is they do these summer intensives where 5,000, so it's all the major companies in the United States, which is not that many, like top, but in the summertime, they're starting to scout, male and female dancers. And there'd be 3 to 5,000 people auditioning for that one company. And they would only accept 150 dancers.
Wow.
And so
I mean, this is like a professional sport. I mean, this like D1 sports, professional sports,
it's next level. And I mean, we can dive into all that because I think ballet in itself is one of the most incredible sports because not only do you have to be in the best of physical shape, you have to have artistry, you have to have musicality, and then there's, the musicians that, the orchestras, and then there's, the costume designers, and then there's the set designer. I mean, it is like a movie.
It might even be above professional sports.
Truly.
I was going to say that. I have some friends that are high-level ballerinas, and the only thing I could compare it to is a top-level boxer, to that level of degree of dedication and training that you have to do, because it's, I mean, like you said, not only is it a physicality thing, it's, you have the art, the creative, the dedication. It's your life from start to finish every single day. And it's, because if you fall behind just a little bit, whether that's flexibility or endurance, cardiovascular endurance, or, weight, I heard is a big issue there too. There's a lot of different factors. And I think on a team sport specifically, you can get away with a lot more slack than you would in something like this.
Yeah, because I mean, you really are kind of solo in a sense. I mean, there's the corps de ballet, which is where you're dancing with many dancers at once, and then you become a soloist, which is where you get little solo performances within the ballet. And then there's principal dancers that take on the main roles. So that's kind of the hierarchy, But yeah, but in a sport, it's like, you have to have, like, in the corps de ballet, you have to all identically look alike, or your movements and your body and things like that. But it's hard with ballet too, because like I was talking about, that spark and that, that it factor that makes someone want you, you do have an individuality as well, and your own artistry and creativity and things like that, that you're trying to be like, look at me, and so it's hard because ballet just kind of molds you into what they need specifically. But, so at 13, that's when these companies at 13 years old, start looking for you. And they can't offer you a contract like legally until you're like, I think 17 or 16 or 7, later. And, we're still young girls, like just going through, puberty and, life and big changes. So, but it's really funny that, my parents would ask their other friends when I was young, they go, how do you raise a child that raises themselves? I mean, because the discipline that I grew up with wasn't because of not only that my ballet teacher put on me, or my parents never put that discipline on me. They didn't have to, because I had it in myself. Because our ballet teacher was like, if you want to get here, you have to give up this. You can't go skiing. You can't put on rollerblades. You can't do these things. You need to be stretching. You need to be eating these things. No cakes, cookies, chips, cracker. Like, she's like, the 3 C's, you don't do, because it was just like, your body is a temple. It is your vehicle that's going to get you there, And so when I was little, I was like, I'm giving it all up. It was just kind of, it's not that I didn't have fun or play or, ride a bike or something, but, I really did sacrifice so much, and I grew up really fast,
So what was your plan? Like, what would you have done for college in that? Would you have skipped college and gone pro because it would have been 18?
Yep. That's exactly what you do. I mean, some dancers today will do online, schooling. And I know some dancers go to NYU and things like that. But it is a full-time, ballet is a 10-hour job. Sometimes, if you start going into the performance season, which is usually in the fall, winter, and then the summer, those are 14-hour days. I mean, you have class and rehearsals. You have a full 8 hours of dancing on your feet before you even go and do a performance in front of thousands of people. I mean, it's like, it's full-time plus. And so you just really have to be a well-oiled machine, and again, have that such discipline in your life to be able to handle all of that. So at 13, that's what I was doing. And we'd have to go to bigger cities to audition for these big companies because, they were national companies. So, and they also would audition at other companies. So like American Ballet Theatre, where I went, they would audition in Seattle, or they'd audition in San Francisco, where they could use those facilities, So, my mom would pack me up in the car, or we'd get on a plane to go somewhere to audition. And, there'd be 500 people, dancers that come from all over that area. If ABT was auditioning in San Francisco, we had all of LA coming up, to audition there. And sometimes that would be the only place for the West Coast. And so we would be filtered in having a couple of auditions, and they would just slowly kind of cut the girls down. Wow. But then you didn't get an acceptance that day. You'd have to wait. It's like college. You would have to wait 6 weeks for the mail to come in to see if you got, you'd look at it and you go, okay, is this a thin envelope or is this a thick envelope? You know what I mean? You know what those are.
Dude, that was the most heart-wrenching moments in senior year of high school. But getting that thick envelope was...
You're like, I did it.
Yeah.
And now I feel so bad for these kids that have to open up emails to get their acceptance letters into colleges, because that just seems even more nerve-wracking to me, just by one click. At least with an envelope, you could kind of tell. So you're like, I'm not going to open it. Or you could say, I got it, without even opening it. And I just think it's kind of like Christmas. Like, that was kind of a little bit of a present in itself. But anyway, so I would audition for these things, and at 13 years old, you guys, I was accepted into the summer intensives at American Ballet Theatre, which was the #1 ballet school or ballet company in the United States, and it was my dream company. And I remember having a dance teacher there that would say, he'd get up on a stool and he'd go, listen, honey, you guys don't have to worry anymore. You're at ABT. And it was like,
wow.
Oh, good, we made it. But then, there was only 150 of us out of, 5,000 dancers that would audition. So
I have a quick question about habits and stuff, because this, obviously what you're describing is very, very, like you said, highly skilled, highly focused. How were you able to stay so focused at a young age to do that? Because I remember myself at that age, there's no chance I could pull something like that off, right?
Yeah.
I was focused on sports and school, whatever, but this is a whole other level.
I was trying to think about that, because it was just in me. It was ingrained in my blood, and it's just what I wanted to do, and I didn't see anything else. But also I think that it depends on the time. I guess kids today, even, or maybe when you were a kid, it was the emphasis, it's like, where was the emphasis? Was the emphasis on you going to school and then playing recreational sports and then, having time to watch cartoons, like, where was your emphasis? For me, it was like, I already had put that emphasis, like, my emphasis is ballet and I'm going to do everything to live, eat, and breathe it. And it just stuck.
And it's a great question. And I feel like what you're saying is like, if you love it, you'll do anything because that's what you love and that's what you're going for. Like, I was at the age of seventh grade, it was all about film school and like making home movies and editing them on iMovie. But it was also playing football, playing lacrosse, going to the park, playing baseball with your friends. So it was like, I had no formal film classes I could take, not even in high school. So like I couldn't even study film properly until college. You could do like jobs before then, but nothing that intense or even that official. It was all, yeah.
But isn't it so telling though to kind of think about what you were doing when you were that age and the fact that it has come to fruition now.
Yeah.
Like it is kind of pretty telling. Because I think that those creative juices and your passions and what lights you up and what gives you that spark, it really does kind of develop when you're that age, And then the rest of your life, you're just trying to figure out how to do it, and you try on all these different, hats of, oh, I'm going to try this or I'm going to try this. But it's like, but what did I love? What have I always loved? And that's kind of the sad part of my story is that I'm not a ballerina. I never became a full professional. I got right up, to it, and then it collapsed. And now I'm trying to figure out how do I use all of that discipline and that a creative energy in artistry that I have always had and was, born with. And it was a given gift to me by God that how do I do that and use that now in my life? And it's kind of been interesting because it's like I have to have multiple outlets to kind of fill that void because ballet was so huge that it just kind of, when that bubble burst for me, it was like devastating. I didn't know what else to do with my life. I literally had no clue because there was no other outlet for me, or I had no other vision other than this is what I'm doing, So that's really interesting. And I also had a friend that asked me like, well, what would you tell parents, like if their kids, like what would you tell your younger self, And I think for me, I was like, well, to lighten up, because it's like, there is so much more in the world other than just that one thing that I loved. And I wish I would have been a little lightened up because I'm still telling myself that as an adult, but yeah, like I do need to lighten up. But like, I think I should have enjoyed doing other things so that I knew that the importance of when something doesn't go right, it's okay. And you've got other things to do, But that's I think the hindsight now, but.
Thank you for watching Studio 22.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And follow our socials at Studio 22 Podcast.